Welcome to the Irrepressibles Podcast with today's guest company, Prestige Home Improvement.
So when we were in the car, like a lot of the conversations we had was like, how are we gonna make our company the best? Compared like taking everything we had learned from both organizations we worked at, like what can we do? And like a lot of the things that like were consistent with like what we were planning was like we're gonna recruit salespeople, obviously, because that's how you grow an organization. But we're gonna like drill them with like mindset meetings, right? Okay. And I think that's a huge part of like Prestige's success. It comes from the belief systems.
Louis Lacombe-Denis and Travis Moriarty founded Prestige only 2 years ago. They've grown the company to 2 provinces and show no sign of slowing down.
Now, this could have probably been planned a little bit better, but I remember there's quite a few weeks in a row where like Louis would drive up to a certain area that we were trying to like target, and I'd be on the laptop calling and trying to book appointments, and we had say an hour to an hour and a half drive, and we were hoping that we'd just book enough appointments on the way up, so that we can actually go and
that's confidence. You're on the way.
I think it's like a little desperation too, you know.
Welcome to the Irrepressibles Podcast. I'm Danny, your host, and I'm super happy to introduce you to the 2 founders of Prestige, Ottawa's up-and-coming, fastest-growing HVAC company, Louis and Travis.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Happy to be here.
Super happy to have you here. Full disclosure, to start off with, I have to say, Louis, you are my son. And so I do know something about your company, but at the same time, it's so fast growing and you're so busy that a lot of things have happened that I'm not necessarily aware about. So I'm sure I'm going to learn things as we go. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation. Travis, I met you when the 2 of you got together. So nice to see you again.
It's been a couple of years now.
It's been a couple of years now. Yeah. So listen, fastest growing HVAC company in Ottawa, but also Halifax now. As of this summer, you guys just got back from Halifax last week. Mm-hmm. What's going on over there?
Yeah, so we just expanded out there. I think it was the start of August. And it was kind of funny how it happened. Originally, we were going to expand out to Toronto and almost got a place there. We were literally about to sign a lease for an apartment. And last second, we just decided to kind of like change what we were doing. Mm-hmm. And then started looking over on the East Coast, and they had basically looked like a lot of opportunity, a lot of rebates, a lot of people using old equipment. And so we did a test week and then went out there and just opened up an office.
So you were at the right place at the right time with Halifax. Like you say, the rebates, and no one was really doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, it was less competition. Yeah. And I think that, things just worked out where when we went out there and we started kind of testing out the market with as far as like, marketing, but then also sales and stuff like that, I feel like our strategy worked extremely well out there. So it's been really beneficial.
And so the company is how many years old now?
So it's April 2022. So it's almost 3 years.
So 3 years and you're already opening an office in Halifax, not just an office, a big showroom. You have 4 employees already that have moved there and working full time. Mm-hmm. That's amazing in such a short time. Louis, just a moment ago, you were going through your phone and you came upon a picture from 2022.
Yeah.
Tell me about that picture.
Well, that's funny because that was literally the month we started the company. So the very first thing we did was actually to create a website. And as soon as we had a website, that's when we took the leap to go all in our business. And I think 2 weeks later, we decided to go to another city because part of our business involves like going to various locations to test out the market, see how things are over there. And I think that was in Kingston.
Yeah, Belleville.
Kingston,
So that's a picture of the 2 of you in Kingston looking really happy.
Yeah. So,
but back then, if you project yourself, not project, but if you go back to that time, what was going on in your minds back then? Like before you even knew that Halifax would ever be a thing?
It probably was a mix of a lot of emotions. Yeah. One being freaked out as we had just like quit our a job and go just jumping into that thing, but also excitement, belief in like the future. Like we were very excited for like our vision and whatnot. And I think we were just like kind of like going in blindly, but like it all worked out. And part of it is our intuition, and I think that's like a big part of like our business is just since the beginning we've been following our intuition and doing what feels right and following our gut. And that was like also like part of like what got us to make the move to Nova Scotia, right? Like Travis said, we were planning on going to Toronto. We heard from various people that there was a good market in Nova Scotia. It wasn't the first time that like we heard about that, but we were kind of like, we're gonna stay in Toronto. It's our province. We kind of know how the market works over here. But then there was one person who we talked to one morning, and that was like, I think the week after Travis went with some of the boys to Toronto to check out some houses and apartments.
We had like a long conversation for like 4 hours because we were about to sign a lease to move to Toronto and basically like open up another office. And we had like a conversation talking about it and ultimately decided to not do that, which was kind of discouraging because we brought out some of the sales guys. The same guys that moved to Nova Scotia also came with us as well too. And then the next morning, he got a call from someone that we'd been working with, and kind of one thing led to another. And I think from that point, it was a month or 2 months we opened up.
Well,
so it was a quick transition. Yeah.
So that morning we were earlier than everyone else in the office. And I think we sat down for about 45 minutes before anyone came in, and we just had a conversation because I just had that phone call. And essentially I brought up the idea. I was like, we've been talking about Nova Scotia kind of like not too seriously, but like I think we should actually reconsider the Toronto move, and like because of what I've heard from this person. And then we kind of like talked about it for about 45 minutes, and we essentially just came with the decision of doing that in that time frame. And that same day we like told the guys. Later on in the day, I think Travis had phone calls individually with each of them, and they were like, yeah, let's do it.
They were a little bit freaked out at first too, because I think they were planning to move to Toronto and like gotten themselves in that mindset. So it was a little bit shocking to them at the start. But then after we have a really good team, and the guys that move there as well too. It's a pretty big step to move to a new province, test out a new market, and so within like an hour they were like looking at apartments in Nova Scotia.
But it's interesting. It's interesting though what you're saying about how like it was a decision that happened sort of suddenly and with certainty, because I've heard this before from Alex and Vanessa from Rain, who and also from Elber, how you think you're headed in one direction, and all of a sudden within 24 hours a conversation can happen or an idea can pop up, and everything a 180-degree change can take over the company. And you were talking about intuition, and that's kind of where it comes from.
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily, obviously it's not planning ahead, because it's a very fast process.
We had thought about it. We hadn't like made a serious plan, but we kind of thought about it. And
it was lingering.
Not seriously. And then like that morning is when we really decided to start like putting things together. And then we organized just like a test, like a pilot test trip over there. So they went out there for about a week and tested out the market, and it was really good. And little did we know that test was going to be a lot easier than what came after, right? Like everything happened perfectly during that week when we tested out the market.
So before we keep going, for people who don't know what HVAC is, before we go into what you were about to say, which sounds very interesting, can you just explain a little bit what your product is, and when you talk about the market, who are these? Who's the market? Of course.
Well, I think the reason why we differentiate ourselves pretty well is because we really put a focus on heat pump technology, whereas most HVAC companies will do the traditional, furnace, air conditioner, because that's what's been going on for a long time. But since, heat pumps have been around for a long time, but the government has been pushing some rebates, trying to incentivize homeowners to use that technology to reduce carbon emissions, because furnaces use gas and various fuel sources like oil and propane. And when we started the company, we figured like that the heat pump market was going to be the next big thing, right? So we put a huge focus on heat pumps, and so we still do the rest, right? If a homeowner needs a furnace or like they specifically want an air conditioner, we'll do it. But about 90% of our business is heat pumps. And in Nova Scotia, the market is a little different than Ontario. Whereas in Ontario, it's a lot of like central air, so people will have ductwork. In Nova Scotia, I would say probably 90% of our jobs are mini split heat pumps. So it's like the wall units that you see in like apartments and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say like pretty much all of residential HVAC is what we do. But like he was saying, like just focusing on like renewable energy. It's kind of similar like the solar boom. Like solar energy, it's becoming a very big thing too. I would say those two things are pretty similar as well too.
So just to give a little bit of context, you mentioned earlier that you both quit your jobs to get together as partners and start Prestige. You were both in that industry prior, but what made you decide to leave the jobs that you were in, which was the same industry, and sort of go off on your own and build something new?
Well, I would say, first of all, getting into the HVAC industry is very random for both me and Louis as well too. So obviously when COVID-19 happened, it kind of changed a lot of things for a lot of people. And I was actually in school to be like a personal trainer. I think, Louis, you were a bartender.
I was also doing a course to be a personal trainer as well.
Yeah, there's a big fitness component in our company too.
You could tell.
Yeah, and basically, so they had shut down the world, and I think like 4 or 5 months after doing like pretty much nothing, like myself personally, I saw basically just this Instagram story from a guy that actually spoke in my college, and I thought it was a fitness job. And it turns out it was sales in the HVAC industry. Okay. So very different, but like, I didn't have much going on. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And so I worked at a company there for about like 8 months. And that's actually where I met Louis. But it was kind of funny how things like turned out, because I met Louis, and then pretty much 3 weeks after meeting him, like we got along. I'd say we were like good friends. I had actually quit and went to a different company. Right. And so I was like, I didn't really think I'd see Louis again. And then about a month later, he showed up at that company as well too. We didn't know, like it wasn't planned. And I don't think you knew that I was.
Oh, I didn't know you were there.
So life was trying to keep you together.
And basically we worked at that company for, I think, about a year. And not to get into it, but basically, I think for me personally, it was more out of like pain than like trying to pursue something bigger and like a bigger vision, right? And
you didn't feel at your place in that
No, not at all. And also like me and Louis we didn't even realize it, but at the same time, right, like around the time we were thinking of leaving, he had his own ideas of starting a company with someone else, and I had my own ideas of leaving and starting with someone else as well too. And we started talking, and obviously we'd gotten along over the years, and we were pretty good at sales. And so then we were like, why don't we just, do this together? And it was actually Eric, like Louis' brother, right?
Who's the producer of the podcast?
Producer of the podcast.
Sitting right behind the screen
he was the first person we worked with, and I remember we'd be going to, appointments for our old company, about to do sales, and one person would be driving, one person is, working on the business, talking with Eric, setting up a website and stuff like that. And then
so you're working out of your car.
Yeah, exactly.
On your way to seeing clients.
Still working at the other job.
At this moment, there's just the two of you.
Yeah, exactly. And Eric too as well.
And Eric,
yes. But it's funny. Those stories are funny to look back now too, because it was just like, this. We had this kind of idea of what it was going to be, but it was also pretty like Louis was saying, we didn't really know like what we were doing. Is a little bit nerve-wracking and stuff like that too. And
I guess you need a little bit of that too when you're starting off, a sort of like naivete, not knowing what you're getting into, because if you kind of know some of the obstacles that are ahead, or the road bumps that are ahead, you might not want to go that road. But
I think that's obviously it's good to like, and I think we're a bit better at like strategic planning now, but a lot of times you just have to like go for it and start, because if you don't start, like you're not going to even get to that next step. You know what I mean?
Guys must have had really interesting conversations while you were on the road there. You were talking about Kingston. That's what, about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from Ottawa. So you're sitting there, one of you's driving, the other one's on the computer, trying to get everything in place.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what's going on in your minds? What kind of conversations are you having?
There's a lot of
these early
different things.
days?
Obviously, we had just like moved from working for a company to essentially just being our own bosses. To give credit to the first company we worked at, they did a lot of like the mindset meetings things that we do, like that we implemented in our company. And there's this one meeting that I remember that went over like massive action plan, and that comes from Tony Robbins actually. But pretty much I remember that meeting very specifically because that's when I was like, you know what, like, and there was a whole framework essentially to follow in order to get your dreams, right? And to make your vision happen. And so that's when I was like, you know what, I could probably like eventually make my own thing. And I had been like in like kind of like an entrepreneurial mindset since I was very young. And so that just kind of like pushed me to like think that big, you know? And part of the reason why we moved to I speak for myself, moved to another company, it was a big organization, the first one we were at. And I didn't see much room for like progression because it was already a very established company, right? So essentially moved to a very small company, worked in that one for about the better part of a year. But, and we tried to like implement new things and try to like work our way up, but it didn't seem like it was really going anywhere. And that's what I think triggered us to like, to start our own thing.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So when we were in the car, like a lot of the conversations we had was like, how are we going to make our company the best, compared like taking everything we had learned from both organizations we worked at, like what can we do? And like a lot of the things that like were consistent with like what we were planning was like, we're going to recruit salespeople, obviously, because that's how you grow an organization, but we're going to like drill them with like mindset meetings. Right. Okay. And I think that's a huge part of like prestigious success. It comes from the belief systems that you set as the foundation for your company.
And did you know in those moments in the car, what was the mindset quality that would help you build your company, or did this come progressively?
Honestly,
did you know from the outset what it was?
It was, I think we knew it intuitively, and we didn't put like our finger on it right from the get-go, but it's, you touched on it earlier, it's just being absolutely certain. Right? Certainty is probably the best thing you can do.
Conviction,
exactly. And we basically were absolutely certain that like we were gonna make it happen, right? And like,
what do we used to say when things were like really
we'll always figure it out, right?
That was your mantra, your motto.
Yeah, it was like a mantra.
We'll always figure it out.
Yeah. So through challenges and obstacles, we just say like, you know what, we'll figure it out. Yeah. And we always did, sometimes it was a little stressful, but we always ended up
There must have been a few challenges where you're like, are we going to figure it out?
Yeah.
Did you ever have doubt? Or
We didn't have doubt. We were like, how are we going to get out of this one? Because it seems like that's going to be a tough one.
Can you give us an example of a tough one that you had to, apply your mindset quality beliefs to and get through it?
Well, a lot of times it came from a good part of our business is generating leads, so appointments, right, with homeowners. And a lot of times we ran into the problem where we couldn't generate leads, or we had a very hard time generating them. And we had different ideas, and there's like essentially you have to like get some kind of marketing strategy going to be able to like then like set up some appointments. And at the start, we didn't have much like financial resources to play with, right? And so our marketing efforts were very limited. And so we had to be very creative with the way we generated leads. And that came multiple times throughout our journey, is like, how are we going to create a new type of lead or a new creative way to generate appointments? And at the start, essentially, it was Travis and I getting on the phone, setting up some appointments and just off, Canada 411, because like we didn't have any way to, put some money into like campaigns on Facebook or Google. So we had to use what we had.
So the good old telephone.
Yeah.
I remember we'd drive up to, now this could have probably been planned a little bit better, but I remember there's quite a few weeks in a row where like Louis would drive up to a certain area that we were trying to like target. And I'd be on the laptop calling and trying to book appointments. And we had, say, an hour to an hour and a half drive. And we were hoping that we'd just book enough appointments on the way up
Okay.
so that we can actually go and
That's confidence. You're on the way. And
I think it's like a little desperation too, you know. Yeah, but it's kind of funny. Those stories are funny to look back on too. But yeah, it's like you know, it's kind of like those struggles and stuff too that when you look back on, it's kind of cool from where you are now and stuff.
Yeah. So that picture, Louis, would can we put it on our Facebook on our webpage?
I don't know about that one. We were at a bar, like just having a good time.
You look so happy.
I'll find a picture that you
from the early days
can put up for sure.
Okay. So it reminds me of the Lincoln Lawyer type of thing. Working out of your car and basically building your company on the road.
Yeah.
That's basically what you did.
So it started
with a telephone. So
that's why it's kind of funny. Sometimes people, I mean, like I said too, you can always, if we knew what we knew now, we'd obviously do things a little bit differently too.
Right.
But a lot of people, they're always like trying to come up with the perfect plan and have everything like perfectly scheduled out. Right. Whereas if you just basically do the crappy work at the start, you can really start to generate stuff as well too. And I think we did that for like 9 months. But it's kind of hard to really develop systems and stuff when you're both on the road, because we used to go to appointments together and we'd be doing sales together, right? And I think when things really changed too is when we split up, and basically we had the plan that we were going to start to, because we didn't even have an office.
When you say split up, you don't mean the company was still...
No, like basically we used to go to sales appointments together. And so we were going to split up. I was going to continue to go to sales appointments, and Louis was going to start to develop...
Split up the tasks.
Yeah, exactly, and develop like a sales manual with Eric's help as well too, and actually start to create a little bit of like systems on how we're going to recruit, train, and build the sales team in other positions, right?
Right.
And so when we split up there, because we didn't have an office at the time too, right? So we were like, okay, in 2 months we're getting this office. And basically, we're going to be splitting up. He's going to work on some of the systems. I'm going to continue generating revenue for the company. Right. And that's when things really started to, to get like to develop as well too, because we actually had, assets and systems and things that we could use to train other people and then actually start to scale the company.
So all the work that you put into it together at the very beginning ended up paying off. You had your so you're sitting in your car, you have your vision or your conviction, like you were saying, Louis, that this was going to be the next big, HVAC company, and you were on your road to there. Yeah. Next step, building a team. So, how do you get people on board when it's this early on?
Well, I think that it's kind of funny. Like, there's a lot of people that say don't hire your friends or your family, right? And so we did things a little bit differently. Yeah. Like pretty much both of our brothers work with us, and then we looked at bringing on like a lot of our friends as well too. And so one of my friends was our first guy that was actually booking appointments for us. Okay. Then my brother was our second. Right. And so we started to just bring on people that, it's funny how like things worked out, because it's always like timing too, right? Because some, like my brother, for example, he was not really happy with how his career was going, his job was going. He was working from home, right? And so we were looking for someone. He's a smart guy, and he's not really happy where he was. So that kind of worked out well. And now he's actually the sales leader running the office in Nova Scotia as well too, right?
Okay, so he's still with you.
Exactly, yeah. He's one of our top performers. Okay. And so things like that, I think these people believed in like me and Louis. Maybe if you looked at the business plan, it might not have looked as attractive, because we knew it up here, but it wasn't as like. That's
interesting that this is how it played out for you guys. Because when I speak to other founders, sometimes I'll say, in the beginning, our friends and family were saying, "Are you crazy? This is never going to work. You're thinking too big. This is too much of a risk." Whereas for you guys, it was the presence of the friends and family that allowed you to take the company to the next step.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that our core team essentially is all the close people that we have. Right. So the family, friends, for example, we have Liam, who was Travis's friend from a long time ago. Kai too, friend from high school. Tyler, who's just the first person. Nick, who was one of my best friends. Nick's story is actually pretty funny because like we were just hanging out one day and he was like, oh, like he worked at the government as like a student job. He was working full time there. But I think when he was like kind of anticipating his studies to be over, he was like, I don't really want to be in the government, but I need to find something. So he was, that one night he was telling me like, I think I'm going to go work for this person. And I was like, what? Why would you come work for us? Like, why would you go work for that person? Because we knew that person too. And we were like, there's a way better opportunity here, not to put that person down. But then he was like, oh yeah, well, I definitely want to do that. I just didn't think like that was an option. And then like I was like, yeah, and we kind of were just like, excuse my language, shooting the shit at that time. And then about 4 months later, he was like, yeah, I'm quitting my job and I'm coming. I was like, what? I was like, because we weren't talking that seriously. Like we kind of like were just talking about it at first, but then like I didn't think he was like actually gonna like pull the trigger on that. And then he did, and then that put a lot of pressure on me and Travis, because like, you know, something that Travis says a lot is that every time these like people would come in, because they're our friends, our family, it was quite stressful because we don't want to let them down, right? It's not an employee that comes in and like 2 weeks later like they leave or like you have to let them go. It's like someone close. So there was a lot more pressure of like making it succeed, right?
They've got mortgages. They've got bills to pay and stuff
and not
like
to
that,
mention your
you know?
relationship, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You want to
100%.
maintain the friendship or the family.
So every time that happened, like, and Nick being one of them too, like we had to make sure that we were doing the right thing, and we wouldn't let them down. And Nick's position is not, we didn't have like a system or like a plan really for Nick. He's a project manager. That's what he studied. And we didn't really know what his job was going to be exactly. We knew we needed help with the business, but he came in and from day one, he just like hit the ground running and like created his position essentially. And it was very helpful. I would say like Nick's involvement in the company has been like quite like an instrumental part of like the growth of Prestige for sure.
It's like the other side of you know, I was saying the planning and like the systems and stuff like that too. Yeah, he's a project manager, so he actually like, you know, we'll be trying to like do something that maybe like we don't have the perfect plan for, and he's like, okay, like, it's a good like push and pull for me and Louis, because you know when we were going to Nova Scotia, we are like, okay, we're just gonna you know open up there. He's like, hold on, you need like this regulation, this. So
he's very organized, systematic, whereas like we're more like go. So like he gets us like he puts us in the right lane, you know. Like, so it's a good thing. Yeah,
I think we push him to kind of go like just go for things a little bit too.
Move a little faster and stuff.
Exactly.
And then,
but it's funny because you're talking about like you have different qualities, different strategies, but at the same time you have this pretty big team now. What is it, 13, 14 people now?
That's closer to 20.
20, okay.
Yeah.
So a team of 20, and getting back to the mindset, if we go back to those days in the car, the mindset you were saying, it's conviction and belief in the vision. But it's important for you guys to share or promote a mindset value to your team. So is it still the same thing? Is it because conviction coming from you, it's your company, right? But it's not necessarily what'll drive an employee or someone who's not invested the same way you are. So how do you? Because Travis, I know you do mindset meetings. It's very important. It's part of the culture of the company. What is it you talk about, or how do you get your employees to embark on this journey with you and be so loyal and dedicated and believe in your vision?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I mean, we'll do meetings on a lot of different things, like limiting beliefs, you know, empowering beliefs, kind of like destroying. A lot of times you go through life and everybody goes through school and you kind of learn that you got to fit into this path or this way of life, right? And then as you start to kind of, you know, really think about these things, you realize that a lot of these things are just limiting beliefs, right? Like you can do a little bit, like a lot more than you really think. And I think that it's important too, just to kind of like break down those things, especially when people start. And it's funny, like obviously for me and Louis, it's the conviction of the company and our vision. But I think it's important when you're trying to like inspire and, you know, motivate a team and have people that, like you said, are like extremely loyal. you have to make sure that their vision for their life can
Yeah.
fit into your vision.
Okay.
Right? So if you're only ever talking about the things that are going to say benefit, like, you know, me and Louis or the business, right? And you're not trying to like align their vision as well too with yours and like asking them about them and talking to them, right?
Right.
Then I think that's when you start to kind of like lose people as well too. But if you can really start to like, you know, align where they want to be in 5 years with, you know, the opportunities that are going to, you know, happen with like, say, our company or our business as well too, and just talking to people, that's when you really start to get some good results, I find.
It's working because when you told me that, you know, the Halifax move happened very quickly and suddenly, and 4 of your employees just got on a plane and moved their lives to Halifax.
Yeah, we've had a couple people say that actually.
What?
Like, how do you
no,
do
but
that?
seriously, that's major. It's and not to mention that they thought they were going to Toronto, so it's a completely different lifestyle.
Yeah.
And but they did it out of loyalty or out of belief in what they were doing. So these morning meetings obviously are instilling a very important quality in your team.
Yeah, well, I think for me personally, when I started to like say at the first company that we worked at as well too, when I started to really think about some of these things too as well, my life like changed quite a bit because I don't know, like even something as simple as like most people in the company work 6 days a week, right? And a lot of people like 4 years ago, that's not something that I really you know, considered doing. Right. And then, you know, me and Louis work like pretty much 7 days a week. And it's just something that you can get used to and stuff, right? And so you start to think bigger, you start to realize how hard you can push yourself, and it kind of ignites something inside of you. And I think that a lot of these guys as well too, like some of our guys, like Liam, who's a sales leader in Ottawa as well too, he had quit his job as personal trainer, right? And he came over as well too. And I think when they start to see their results and their own progress as well too, it really ignites them inside of them as well, you know, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. Just getting back to the limiting beliefs, I find that really an interesting topic. And I know you address the limiting beliefs of your staff and your team, but what are your own limiting beliefs that you identified and got over?
It's a good question. I think part of our limiting beliefs came from the industry itself. We thought that it had to run a certain way, and a lot of like our limiting beliefs from like, you know, the industry were broken down by just trial and error, you know, trying new things, seeing homeowners, pitching them on new products, new ways of pitching the products, and you know, various things like how we contact suppliers, contact lenders, like something that Travis picked up on really quick. Actually, that's what got us to start the business, was just picking up the phone and getting on the phone with people who you wouldn't think they would like listen to.
So the limiting belief was people aren't going to take us seriously? Or what was it exactly?
So, or like people wouldn't, or you can just like pick up the phone and get in touch with someone to make something happen, right? It's the taking action. And you can touch on it if you want, but essentially like he was part of this group, little group of people who like helped each other out, and he was talking to them, and he was like, I want to start my own thing, but I don't know where to start. And the guy was just like, why don't you just pick up the phone and call them? And he was like, you know,
had thought of that.
Yeah.
It sounded stupid at the time, to be honest with you, but I don't know. I feel like the more and more too, like over the years, I feel like a lot of times you put these like obstacles in front of you that aren't even like real, and you'd be surprised at how much you can get if you just like ask, you know? So we literally just called. We were like, you know, we're looking to start a business. This is what we're trying to do. They're like, oh, okay, sounds good. We'll put you in touch with someone else. And a couple of weeks later, we were like approved. And we were like,
and when that worked out, we were like, all right, let's just pick up the phone and call a bunch of other people, you know? Then we got in touch with like, actually our first supplier, which was Goodman. We just like walked in. We went to their office and we just walked in and like we're like, can we talk to someone to set up like an account so we can buy equipment? And like I think that was our first limiting belief, like very in the early days, like before we even like considered like quitting and starting, was just to break down that thing of like you can't like make things happen and we just like started like calling people and making things happen, taking action, right?
Yeah.
And that was a big one for us.
I think a good way to think about limiting beliefs is they're beliefs that are disguised as facts of life, right? So they're not actually real, but you've been either programmed or you've thought this way for so long that you think it's a fact of life, right? Like a lot of them is like, money is not for me, or money makes you a bad person. Money's the root to all evil.
And most of the time, the self-limiting beliefs come from a long time ago, childhood or adolescence, or
they're like programmed.
That's one of the I think that's one of the exercises to do, is to like really like think about when you started believing something, right? And then you realize you don't even know why you believe it, right? And that's when you can start to break down things. You know?
And when things start happening is also when it starts breaking down, because then you realize that
well, it's momentum. Once you start to get a little bit of momentum, then you know your vision starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. I think that I think momentum and results definitely help like break down things.
Cool. So the other thing I wanted to touch on, because we're talking about mindset and that sort of thing, is so we've been talking about the growth of your company and how well it's going, but I know there had to have been moments of doubt. Is this going to happen? Is this going to work out? What do you have to dig inside of yourself to sort of convince yourself to keep going, not to give up? Can you recall a specific moment where you actually had to think, okay, are we going to make it? And
there was one specific time, I think. Basically, we just started. We only had a few installs, and so money, we made a lot of mistakes, and so money was getting a little bit tight. And we had an install that went completely wrong, and we were going to have to refund the customer. And obviously, they didn't know how how big a deal that was to us at the time, but the amount we had to refund to them was more than we had in the business account, right? And pretty much both, like, we didn't have any money personally anymore. We'd put it all into there. And so we were out in Petawawa, which is like 2 hours from here, and the refund was coming in 2 to 3 days or something like that, right? Like 2 to 3 days. And so we were like kind of freaking out because, you know, it's all the money we have, and it's literally more than we had in the account. And so me and Louis were like, okay, we're going to figure it out. We're going to have to call some people, make some sales, and it has to be more than the amount that's coming out in those 2 days. And so we ended up going to, you know, we got some leads, called some clients, and we ended up making it happen, which was, you know, I don't know, at the time it was very, very stressful. And I can't believe that we actually like pulled it off, but we ended up selling a deal, getting it installed and funded the day before the money had to be refunded. And so it hit the account, and I think it was literally like 12 hours later, the money got refunded to the client. And so we just made it past, and it wasn't like, you know, we were still pretty tight for a while, but that was one of those times where it was just like, we were that close from, like, I don't even know what would have happened. We didn't have overdraft or anything like that. So I'm not really sure, but pretty much gone bankrupt.
So
you know?
It sounds like it was almost instinctive for you to sort of like, we have no choice.
There's no other option.
We have to find a solution. We have to, you know, make this happen. And you didn't even question whether or not it was a possibility.
Yeah.
Would that be fair to say? Like, you just...
There's no real other choice, you know? You could either complain and be upset or whatever, or you can just kind of like, you know, try to figure it out.
Well, I remember that time, actually, after we walked out of that customer's house where the issue happened, and we just realized we had to refund that deal. We just like parked on the side of the road and sat there for about 30-45 minutes, just kind of like thinking. And
with their
we must have not said a word for at least 20 minutes there.
Yeah, it was,
just sitting.
I didn't even smoke, but I think I was smoking a cigarette.
And then at some point we just came back to like our original, like, you know, belief that was like, we'll figure it out. And then going into that mindset, and like we started like coming up with like ideas, like, what are we gonna do, solutions, think back on old customers that we had. That maybe we could call, see if they wanted, like, you know, an upgrade or something. And we found this one customer who turned out that she needed some services, and it happened like it's almost like it was the universe, you know, like
The stars
it
were
was
aligned.
perfect because it was also in
yeah.
the same area too. So like,
Okay.
so we were able to go see her that same day, and yeah, we proposed like a system that made a lot of sense to her, and so we were able to make that happen pretty fast. And like Travis said, within the span of like 12 hours, we got the money and lost the
She
money.
almost had second thoughts too, which was really scary as
Yeah,
well
yeah.
because
I'm almost stressed out just listening to the story, and there's a sigh of relief at the end when we
Yeah.
find out that,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that everything turned out. But what did that experience do for you? Like, was that a moment where you said, okay, we figured that out, we tackled that, we can do anything? Or was it more like, okay, we don't want to ever
I
go
think-
through that again, so let's scale it down? Like, obviously that's not what you
Yeah,
did, but like,
for-
what was the debrief after that?
I think for me it was two things. Is one, we started saying, we're always going to figure it out, and so we just kind of like
Yeah.
You
Is
know,
that where the mantra came from?
a little bit, yeah. And then two is also like it was definitely something to run away from too.
Mhm.
So I think only till like recently for me, is there really like more running towards a bigger vision and looking at like the positive side. For a long time it was more like running away from like the pain of failing, the pain of like the business, having no money and stuff too. So it's a pretty deep motivator that you can have. And so kind of just using that for the next like year and a half, 2 years, to work harder than you thought you could, I think that was pretty big for me.
Yeah, huge mindset shift, and also like more on like a practical side of things. It made us realize like every time we made like a mistake, that was like probably the biggest one. Like the original deal was good, but we realized some things that we could have like prevented, and it got us thinking of like, okay, how do we prevent something like that from happening again? And that's when we started thinking systems, contingency plans, and things like that. And that really like got us thinking more in like a business mindset of like, okay, we're building an organization here that needs like a certain level of like system organization to like be able to like survive, versus just like going out and selling deals.
Yeah, because you guys had sales experience from your previous job, but not necessarily business experience. You were learning as you go.
Yeah,
So this was a great learning opportunity in retrospect.
100%. Yeah.
It's kind of funny. You think, I know we thought, oh, we're pretty good at sales.
Yeah.
So it's going to be the exact same, right? And then as you start to, actually start the business, you realize there's a lot of different components that go into it as well.
Yeah. And now you're thinking big. Halifax was one thing, but you're talking about Vancouver already. It's only been a few months now. Halifax hasn't even finished being set up, and you're looking towards the west. Where is that coming from? Is it that conviction that
Well,
it's
like we've always wanted to like explore the world, explore like go to other places, and like we said earlier, our first plan was just to move to Toronto. We kind of switched that plan, so we wouldn't move to like the East Coast, because like that wasn't the smartest move for like us being the founders, and like, running the company from there wasn't going to be an option. But that was like the next big move, and then we were like, hey, what would be the next big move after that? And part of like what drives our business is also the availability of like government support for homeowners, and in British Columbia, there is a lot of like government support. There's rebates and grants for homeowners, and in Nova Scotia, they're amazing, and in BC, they're really good as well. So those were kind of like the two big options that we had, and also just like we wanted some like adventure and find something cool to do, and it seems like a great opportunity, and there's a huge like population over there. So and we did a little bit of market research as well, so we understand that there's a huge opportunity just like there is on the East Coast, and I think that's going to be the next big move.
That's really exciting. It's really, so, and how do you approach this with your team? Do you have people sort of already saying, well, I'm the one who's going to be moving to Vancouver, or is this something that you have to convince them of? Are you thinking of building a team over there?
I think it's a little bit early to, like we don't have the exact plan for that as well too. We're really big on like building leaders in the company as well too. So the only reason that we're able to open up in Nova Scotia is because of some of the guys and especially the leaders that have gone over there.
Right.
And then from that, because we basically want to keep like, you know, some aspect of the culture from the core team, and then you can build under that, right? And so we're not really sure exactly yet who's going to be going over to British Columbia and stuff too. But I'm sure we'll figure it out too. And
But when you're talking about these plans of expansion, is it something that generates stress for you, or is it something more of like, this is exciting, we're gonna keep expanding, getting bigger and bigger, like, or is it a mix of both? Like, you want to expand, but at the same time it's something inevitably that's going to cause some sort of stress and doubt and fear, maybe?
Also? Of course, well, probably both. But I don't think stress is necessarily like a bad thing as well. We plan on having like, you know, multiple offices across Canada as well too. So I think that after we you know, really get Nova Scotia going too, opening up our third location is going to be even better than the second one, right? Because that's our first expansion as well too. So it's kind of like the systems of, you know, there's already things that we know we do a little bit differently too the next time we expand. And so I think that I think it's just part of the growth of the business as well too. But it's a fine line between like anxiety and excitement as well too. So I guess both.
I guess I remember a long time ago you once said to me, Travis, you got to learn to be comfortable with discomfort. Something to that effect, or adopt sort of. Nothing good comes from staying in your comfort zone. I feel like that's what 99% of people do, is they stay into something that they're comfortable in. But if you can constantly get used to just like being, you know, there's a certain scale you can push it, right? Like I think sometimes me and Louis have got to, you know, we're growing pretty fast, and sometimes we got to like take a step back and also make sure that we're keeping the same quality and things like that too. But you have to always get used to like putting yourself into, you know, slightly uncomfortable or even very uncomfortable situations if you want to drive growth. Right. That's why people talk about imposter syndrome as well too. You know? Oh yeah, that's a big one in a lot of walks of life.
100%.
Yeah. You agree with Louis?
Absolutely. For me, it probably tends more towards the excitement side of things. Kind of like Travis said, the first expansion in Nova Scotia was probably the most difficult one. If it will have its own set of challenges going to BC, but having expanded for at least once, you know, we learned a lot. We learned a lot about like opening a new location, getting used to like their culture over there, learning about their regulations and various things like that. And so now we kind of know what to expect when we tap into a new market, right? And so knowing that, and also having all the resources that we now have from like, you know, having Nick, who's a really good project manager, and who's able to like organize things in the proper way to like make things like that happen. And, you know, the financial resources are going to be a lot better as well. The first expansion, we were in a good spot, but there's a lot to put into like opening up a new office, right? So, and then we also took most of our like best sales guys. We obviously had to keep some of them here to make sure things would roll. But we took 4 of our top performers and we relocated them over there, which like we noticed a dip in our business in the revenues essentially for a month or two. And so that was like a little stressful. But then now that like things are going well and things are set up in both locations, it's running really well. We're going to have a lot more support, financial support, and like professional support too from various like professionals to do the next move. So I'm more excited about it.
It's unbelievable that we're talking about all this, and we have to remind ourselves that that first moment in the car was 2 years ago in 2022. Everything happened so fast. Did you know back then, or did you believe back then that it would happen so quickly and that it would expand to this level, you know, like working in different provinces?
You know, what's funny is we always, yes and no, like we always had the vision. We knew that that it was going to be like a big company too. But I think just like recently, the last few months, it's been kind of cool to see how things are actually like coming into place as well. But we always said that this is what we were going to do as well. I think that I don't think we knew exactly like plan to get there. Yeah. But I think that I'd say
I think we thought that we would grow. We would start by growing in Ontario and then expand nationwide. Yeah. But we changed that approach, right? But the idea was always to like grow as fast as possible and in as many locations as possible.
Which is what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, congrats to both of you.
Thank you.
So if you had to give some advice to a new founder, someone starting off, one word of advice, Travis, you give the motivational meetings every morning, so you're used to getting people on board. What is it you would say to someone who's starting off?
I would say choose some, like, as far as like what business to go in, or just like advices in general.
Just in terms of well, let's talk about mindset. Like, what is it that the person needs to develop in terms of those kind of qualities to survive the early days?
I would say there's a guy that I like listening to. His name is Alex Hormozy. He's pretty big on like social media, and he runs like multiple businesses and stuff too. And he always says this thing. He's like, the Rocky cutscene is only 30 seconds in the movie, right? But it might be 5 years for your life, right? So be prepared to just have like a season of no, where you're saying no to all these other things. Don't feel like you're missing out at all. And be prepared to basically have, multiple years where, it is a struggle too, but just if you don't stop, you can't lose.
Perseverance then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then just getting used to putting yourself in uncomfortable situations too, I'd say.
And what about you, Louis?
I would say for me, it's like being very strong on the belief system. So Travis did a morning meeting the other day that was really good, and it's like something that, again, a lot of the stuff we talk about, it comes from Tony Robbins, but it's the success cycle. And essentially it's this concept where like when you take action and you get results, right? And then your results will increase your belief. And then like there's this cycle, right? Because like you reinforce that cycle consistently, right? You get results, increase your belief, you take more action because you have better beliefs, and then it's this cycle. But it goes both ways too, right? And I think like the strongest thing you can do is to be very strong on that belief system and to have a clear vision for it and absolute certainty. And that will like just lead everything else.
I see what you mean, because I can imagine it would be easy to sort of opt out of the belief system when things are going wrong, and sort of think this is not going to work out, and especially if other people in your environment are saying, "What are you guys doing? This is too much risk, etc." You have to really, like you say, be convinced in your own belief system that things will turn around and things will go your way.
One thing I would actually say too is that be very aware of the environment that you put yourself in too. Okay. Because like it's been proven that the easiest thing you can do is put yourself into a different environment. And no matter how strong your conviction is and your beliefs is, if you are around people that are, maybe putting you down or creating these limiting beliefs and stuff like that, or just discouraging you as well too, then it's very, very difficult to, accomplish the things that you want to do. And so I feel pretty lucky that I've got like, a lot of my friends that we've actually brought on the team and family and stuff like that. Yeah. But I'm very, very careful about like who I spend time with now. And negativity can be a lot stronger in the world than positivity as well too. Right. So I would say just be very like aware of your environment.
That's great.
And
advice.
Don't be afraid to cut out some people that may be negative, right? People will get emotional and like will be like, oh, well, I want to keep this person in my life because, maybe they've done something for you, right? Or you feel you feel like you owe them something. But if that person brings more negativity and leads you into a bad cycle, then you need to have a strong mindset on being able to cut some people out, and not feel bad about it. Because at the end of the day, you can try to help them as much as you can, but sometimes people they don't want to believe, right? and they'll just lead you into like a bad like pattern or bad habits. And the best thing you can do is definitely like just focus on your own thing, and don't be afraid to like cut those people out.
Yeah.
But also keep the people that
Yeah.
have great mindset as well. You have to keep them in, right? And
Right.
make sure to grow with them. And if they grow at a faster pace, try to keep up.
I love it. Keep up. So these, I would be really interested in seeing these morning motivational meetings. And I think Eric has already said that he would go and have a look. If
Oh,
you
yeah?
guys are okay with that, so
Yeah, for sure.
we'll include it in the podcast so that
Okay.
listeners can have a little snippet of what it is that you do to get your team motivated.
Yeah.
We had a little taste of it today. Thank you so much for coming, and congratulations on the huge success of your company. I think it's
Thank you.
awesome. You guys are great.
Thank you very
That's
much.
great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much once again for making it all the way to the end of our 5th episode with the 2 co-founders of Prestige Home Improvement, Louis Lacombe-Denis and Travis Moriarty. Now, before we end the episode, I want to show you a little snippet of those morning motivational meetings that they do in the Prestige offices. Enjoy.
So I don't know if you guys have, you guys ever seen this video? The Patrick Bet-David 1-page business plan. So basically the idea is to first, instead of starting to actually make your goals for the next year and what things you want to accomplish, is first take a look back at a couple areas of your life and kind of dissect what went well in 2024 and what didn't go well, right? And being like extremely honest about it as well too. So basically take a look. There's 6 main areas that he covers, and it's kind of like one side is more like business, one side is more like personal, right? So you've got financial, business, personal development, then spiritual health and family, right? So take a look at these 6 areas of your life and look back at 2024 and try to like gauge, did you guys write goals out for 2024?
Yeah.
Try to gauge basically like how your year went on the percentage of goals that you actually hit, right? Because it's kind of basically what he was saying too is if you look back, you dissect, what went well, what went wrong, and what percentage of the goals you actually hit. It's either your effort, if you hit like say 50% of your goals, it's either your effort or it was the wrong strategy, right? And 99% of the time, it's not the strategy. Maybe 1% it's like, okay, the strategy, the market changed, whatever it is. But most times it's just like the effort that you didn't put in to actually like achieve your goals, right? So whether it was like, my goal was to, make this much financially. Did I work this many days? If I hit 50%, I say typically, and I don't know about you guys, but for me, I find Shane is actually a little bit different. For me, I find if I go to try to hit 80 to 85% of the goals, it's a good kind of like baseline for me, because you kind of want to set goals that are just above what you actually think you can hit. Do you guys set goals similar to that?
Well, I hope you like that little motivational segment. If you want to see the whole meeting, you can head to our YouTube channel at Irrepressibles Podcast. You'll find the video there. If you want to learn more, stay updated, and get a peek behind the scenes at everything we do at Irrepressibles Podcast, head to our Instagram. This is where we post the most content, and this is where you get the most value. Thanks again for making it all the way to the end, and I hope I'll see you in the next episode.